Today is April 26, 2021. And we'll start with the meeting notice statement.
Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Can we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Perot-Lambros,
Here.
Ms. Niedergang,
Sorry, I'm here.
Mr. Cohen,
Here.
Ms. Fraga,
Here.
Mr. Williamson,
Here.
Ms. Sachs,
Here.
Mayor Frida.
Here. Thank you, John. Okay, first up is approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion on the minutes? Eve, going to move? Do you want to move all the minutes
Yes,
as one?
I'm sorry. I'm on a different computer. Everything is in a different place. I'm disoriented. Please forgive me. I would like to move the minutes.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
I'll
David?
second.
Okay, David got the second. He was the quickest. Any questions on anything on the minutes before we vote?
Just a thank you for getting them done so quickly. Thanks.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, that's everyone. Thank you very much. Next up would be announcements. So we'll start with council. Do we have any council members that have announcements or reports they want to make? Eve?
I have a number of things. Is that me? It is me.
Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no.
Maybe I should leave and come back. No.
Right now, it's okay.
Okay, all right. So a few announcements. The Animal Control Committee met recently to review the annual report from White Buffalo. The Deer Management Program, which was started by former Township Mayor Phyllis Marchand, has been and continues to be very successful. In 2001, the first year of the program, there were 245 dead deer removed from the roadways and 76 motor vehicle accidents involving deer. In 2020, there were 103 dead deer removed from the roadways and 24 motor vehicle accidents involving deer. These figures were even lower in 2019, and that may bear out some of the suspicion of our police department that during COVID, when traffic is lighter, that people are going significantly faster. That's definitely been something they've noticed. And I'd like to thank our animal control, Jim Ferry, for really a tremendous job on this. The success of the management program rests very heavily on his shoulders, and he's done a stellar job for many years. Couple of other things. 10 days ago, on April 17th, the Princeton Environmental Commission and the Watershed Institute hosted the annual stream cleanup at Grover Park. And we had over 90 volunteers come to pick up trash in the park and in the woods north of the park. We had over 1,700 pounds of trash and recyclables removed. So, you know, better in the trash than going into our streams and other waterways. And a reminder from the library, Friends of the Library annual book lovers lunch is this Thursday, April 29th, and you can still get tickets at the library website. And finally, an update on the Sustainable Landscaping Initiative. It has a new title, Changing the Landscape, Healthy Yards Equals Healthy People. In conjunction with the library last Wednesday, we had a well-attended virtual meeting to provide an update on the work of this commission, this group on moving Princetonians towards using more sustainable forms of landscaping. And then on Saturday, Sustainable Princeton hosted a mini expo of sustainable landscaping equipment. Mayor Frida and Councilwoman Perot-Lambros were there, so thank you for attending. So they highlighted electric equipment and other methods of taking care of your yard and property that are less harmful for the people that do the work and for the environment. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Dwayne, you got your hand up too, I think?
Yes, Mayor. I have quite a few things from Corner House and the Recreation Department. I just want to give, I don't report on Corner House maybe as often as I should. So I wanted to take some time to talk about some of the things that Corner House has been doing. They're encouraging everyone to watch and all Princeton senior citizens to sign up for the high school senior to senior events on meetings on Zoom. This year's Corner House Student Awards Night. I actually wear my glasses. I'm trying to do this without glasses, but I realize an age has started to catch up with me. This year's Corner House Student Awards Night will be virtual, and the Harriet Robertson Leadership Award will be announced, and the Marion Levine Memorial Scholarships will be awarded on May 25th, 2021 at 6 p.m. The Corner House Foundation will host its annual spring event honoring Leah McDonald with the Marie L. Matthews Award, and the Princeton Police Department with the inaugural James Ford Community Service Award. That will take place on June 4th of 2021. The Corner House clinical programs offer bilingual Spanish-speaking services and currently have openings for the services, as do their clinical programs. Over at Recreation has announced that they are not offering day camp in 2021 because of the same reasons that it wasn't offered last year, dealing with COVID. Even though things are starting to open up, there's so many unknowns still out there. So the Recreation field, they just would not be in the position to offer a safe day camp. However, regarding CP Pool, they expect it to be very similar to how it was last year. So they are still taking applications for pool customer service and those summer seasonal programs. And regarding our athletic fields, and this is not about Hilltop Park and the turf, PRD maintenance staff has been hard at work to get the fields ready for the spring. Both soccer clubs are starting up in the next few days. Baseball, girls lacrosse, and flag football are starting up around now also. The Princeton Public Schools have requested to use CP South and the Smoyer Park baseball field for their middle school program, which actually started back on April 12th. The last piece of news is very bittersweet. Ben Stentz, who's served us so well as our executive director of Princeton Recreation, is resigning and moving on to better things, so to speak. I don't have enough great things to say about Ben. It's just been awesome. And the announcement came out, and Ben, I believe, his last day, which I had here,
July 2nd.
scheduled to be July. That's right, Friday. Thanks, Mayor. Friday, July 2nd. So we wish Godspeed to Ben in his future endeavors, and of course, we'll keep everyone posted and on Ben's replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Other council, Leticia?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, I wanted to announce that very soon, Capitol Health Medical Center is going to officially open. Right now, they did a soft opening, but because there's construction going on, they haven't fully announced an opening. But they are already. I believe we have reported on this before that they're going to be running our Well Baby Clinic. And these are for Princeton families who have no insurance, will be able to, their children ages from birth up to 18 years old will be able to get regular checkups, physical exams, the required immunizations, tests, including lead test, vision test, and hearing screenings. And as in the past, when these clinics, the Well Baby clinics, were ran out of Penn Med on the other side of Route 1, they were only being scheduled on a monthly basis, but now actually families can call anytime and set up an appointment. And they can start calling now to make appointments. Information on how to make appointments is available on the municipal's health department's webpage. And also, I just wanted to mention and thank you to Councilwoman Peron Lambros, who worked to make this happen. And I also wanted to mention, I wanted to comment only because I'm still receiving calls from individuals who either signed or were aware of the petition advocating for a community center. We've been reporting that Councilwoman Peron Lambros, Councilman Williamson, and myself are working on drafting a resolution to establish a community center feasibility task force. And we hope that we'll be able to introduce that at the next council meeting. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have other council, Michelle.
Just very briefly, thank you, Leticia, for reporting on that. It's exciting to know that Capitol Health is going to be here. I wanted to mention one announcement, which is that there's going to be a virtual project update on Friday, May 7th at 8:30 a.m. It's about the Witherspoon Street redesign, trying to get that done, and still getting some feedback from the business community and working together on the details of that. So it's really exciting. I just wanted to announce that. And I also, in honor of Arbor Day, which is April 30th, so just a few days away, I want to recognize that the Shade Tree Commission and our arborist, Taylor Sapudar, we have been recognized, Princeton, as a tree city, 2020 tree city, and we'll be receiving some type of press release or something from the Arbor Day Foundation. So I just wanted to congratulate them again on their good work. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Michelle. Mia?
Yeah, just very quickly, at the traffic safety meeting today, we had a report from Sergeant Murray, who was talking about all the traffic backups during school pickup and drop off. And I guess because of the temperature checks, it takes longer for kids to get in and out. And so he wanted us to just ask parents to either try to come a little bit earlier, or even better to no, David, no. Okay.
I'm sorry, he actually was very upset about parents coming
Do
early.
not come
Sorry.
early.
Okay, don't
Do
come earlier.
not come early.
But the main thing was he wanted kids to walk and bike. And I think that is the important message, that parents should be encouraging their kids to walk and bike anyway, but particularly during COVID with the temperature checks.
That means they leave home earlier. Maybe that's what it was.
Maybe leave home earlier, right? Yeah, thanks, Dwayne.
And I would just like to say, this wasn't specifically discussed, but parents should consider dropping their kids off a few blocks from school instead of coming to drop them off right at the school, because even kids who live far away from school can walk a few blocks to get there. So try to be creative about how to best not create a crush at the schools.
Not create a crush with automobiles.
Right. A crush with walkers is fine.
Leticia?
I realized I didn't provide clarification regarding Capitol Health, even though we've been reporting on this before. For those who were not aware already, that it's actually going to be Witherspoon Street in the former Packard building, where before families had to go to Penn Med. So it's walking distance to many of our families. And that's the exciting part that I had left out.
Thank you. Important detail. Eve?
I just want to add a little something to what David and Mia said, since kids are having their temperatures checked, and So parents are waiting for that. You could find a place a few blocks away, as David suggests, where you can pull over, kid can go in, get their temperature checked, then they can text you, good to go. And so you don't have to be right in front of the school for that moment. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Were there any other council announcements or reports? If not, Bob, do we have any staff announcements or reports that you know of?
Mr. Mayor, just have one thing that I want to really let the council and the community know about, and that is beginning this Friday, we are having the staff begin to repopulate the building. Although most of the staff has returned on and off, Friday signifies our first day of trying to get the majority of the staff back in the building in anticipation of working towards a reopening that we can handle our services like we normally. This will go on for a couple weeks as we kind of shake down the building, see if there's anything else we need to do to continue to make it safe for our employees and obviously for the public. And then after that 2-week shakedown, we'll enter into what we're calling a soft opening, which will open the building half a day for a week or so to see if there are any other problems we need to deal with the public, beginning to populate the building also. And then hopefully by June 1, we will be ready for a full reopening. All of the services that the residents have come to know they'll be able to access in person if need be. So I just wanted to let you know that. Otherwise, that's it for tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, the only thing I just want to remind everyone as we get into the meeting where we're going to have public comment back and forth, that we're all going to let everyone finish comments. We won't interrupt, and that everyone will keep comments, questions respectful and in line. And anybody that crosses the line will be asked to control themselves. And if need be, we can mute people, but we want to make sure all conversations are kept respectful and on point. So I just want to say that before we got too much further. Okay, moving on. David, I believe you have an award of recognition.
I do. Thanks, Mayor. So tonight, we want to do something a little bit unusual. We want to honor a gentleman named Jerry Foster. He's actually not a Princeton resident, but he has contributed more to biking and walking safety in Princeton than almost any Princeton resident has. He's retiring this spring from the Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association. And I'm just going to go through some of the many involvements he's had in Princeton over the years. So as a traffic safety educator for GMTMA, Jerry has been very active in pedestrian and bike safety education within the Princeton Public Schools, originally connecting with our Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee through bike and walk to school programs beginning in 2014. He's been teaching regularly at the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school, teaching classes on traffic safety. He's even taught the high schools new drivers and ones with experience about driving safely with cyclists and pedestrians. At the Summer Youth Police Academy run by Princeton Police, Jerry has taught bicycle safety. He's been part of the annual Wheels Rodeo and has worked with Princeton Police on street smart education campaigns. With Princeton University's annual Bike to Work Week, Jerry has helped to encourage biking as transportation to campus and has been a regular part of GMTMA's bike safety table at Communiversity. The PBAC, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, has been extremely grateful for Jerry's valuable knowledge and suggestions for safety improvements around our town. He's volunteered his time and expertise in attending almost every PBAC meeting since 2014. On Princeton streets, Jerry has conducted numerous walking and biking audits, as well as at busy intersections and along our trails. With his extensive knowledge of Princeton's roads, Jerry created 4 loops. This was last year during COVID, 4 recreational ride loops to help people get out and get exercise when the gyms were closed and so forth. the shortest of which was the Town and Gown Loop, which is 4.5 miles long, to the Fitness Loop, which is 16.6 miles long. And he was a great help in updating Princeton's bicycle map, which was updated and reprinted last year. With his extensive knowledge of the local roads throughout Mercer County, Jerry's been a leader in the creation of the Greater Mercer County Trails Plan, connecting Princeton to the rest of the towns in Mercer County. And I could go on, but I feel like this is getting a little long. So I'll just go on to say that Jerry's been a longstanding member of Princeton Freewheelers and often comes to Princeton by foot or by bike from his home in West Windsor. And though he's leaving GMTMA, Jerry will continue to be a valuable resource towards improving the safety of biking and walking in our town, our county, and our state.
Okay, David, thank you very much for presenting that.
Really.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, really.
Thank you, Jared. We appreciate all your help. Okay, we're going to move on. We have a presentation, and this is going to be a general discussion on an area or areas in need of redevelopment, that designation. We have Kevin McManaman joining us for this, but just a quick note. This is a general discussion. It is not about any specific area in need of redevelopment designation. And we are specifically not going to take questions or comments related to the Princeton Shopping Center, North Harrison, Clearview area, because that is at the meeting tomorrow night. So we legally, we need to just make sure we keep those comments and questions to tomorrow night's agenda and not hit those tonight. So please, if you try to go there tonight, I'm going to have to stop you and ask you to hold them till tomorrow night. Okay. Having said all that, Kevin, thank you for joining us, and hopefully you can help us and everyone in the audience understand what this designation, how it can be used, when it can be used, et cetera.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you. I wanted to talk, so I'll talk a little bit about redevelopment, and in order to do that, I think you have to understand. Yes.
Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself and to the audience and talk a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. Sure. So I'm an attorney with McManaman, Scotland and Bauman. Our firm serves as redevelopment counsel to the township. We've been bond counsel or redevelopment counsel to the Princeton municipalities for decades. We serve as redevelopment counsel and bond counsel to towns in every county throughout New Jersey, all the way from Cape May to Bergen. And I spend a significant chunk of every day working on redevelopment matters for mostly public bodies, do a little bit of private work as well, but mostly public bodies in pretty much, as I said, every county around the state. And so we've been engaged to work with Princeton in some of its redevelopment efforts here. And one of the things we wanted to talk generally about is just redevelopment relative to the experience that most people have with development, which is conventional development under the municipal land use law. Now, the topics that I'll touch on tonight are topics that are the subject of half-day and full-day seminars for professionals, attorneys, planners, engineers, and for public body, governing body members who are interested in learning about them. So I'm going to talk for a very short bit tonight, just to sort of give a flavor of what some of the issues are. But anybody who's really looking to dive into it, I would commend you to New Jersey Future or ICL or the American Planning Association or any other organization that offers seminars that can last half a day or a full day. And they're fabulous. And people like Trishka and I sometimes serve as panel members on them. But tonight, we'll just talk for a few minutes about redevelopment generally. So again, what I'd like you to think about is redevelopment relative to conventional development under the municipal land use law, which for many years was most people's body of experience. Under the municipal land use law, towns adopt zoning regulations that apply to properties. And then when they do, that's largely the end of the town's involvement in the regulation of the development there. Obviously, developers need to go to planning boards and or zoning boards, and you might get relief from whatever the provisions are. But the towns speak through the zoning ordinance, in which they identify permitted uses and bulk standards that are going to govern the development of those sites. And then if you own property all the areas are zoned, right? So whatever the zoning is that applies to your property, that tells you as a developer what you can do, how densely you can do it, whatever other standards apply. And then you are essentially in control of that, assuming you comply with whatever the regulations are when you go to whatever board applies. Redevelopment context provides you, as the town, much more control and flexibility. So those are really the two prominent themes that dominate redevelopment: control and flexibility. Under the redevelopment process, you can really target new zoning for areas that meet certain criteria in the statute that governs it, which is the local redevelopment and housing law. It's a step that would typically include action taken at anywhere from 7 to 10 public body meetings between the governing body and the planning board. It is a multi-step process that unfolds largely in public view, in which members of the public and members of the governing body have an opportunity to see what's happening and comment on it. One of the contrasts that's important to note is people talk about spot zoning, which in the conventional zoning world is something that we know is something that you're not permitted to do. Redevelopment, I think of as really a form of permissible spot zoning. You can target areas that, as I say, meet criteria in the statute. And the zoning will apply to those areas that are characterized by conditions that make it hard to develop. The municipal land use law doesn't really make this distinction. It sort of imposes these zoning regulations town-wide, zone by zone, but not really site by site. And the redevelopment law is a tool that recognizes that some areas of a town are, for various reasons, harder to develop than others. And the town begins the process by designating an area in need of redevelopment. You used to hear the term blight, and blight, the terminology for blight really evolved into area in need of redevelopment. The statute specifies criteria that you need to demonstrate in order to make this initial foundational designation. And some of those criteria include that the generality of buildings are substandard, unsafe, dilapidated, abandoned buildings previously used for commercial, manufacturing, or industrial purposes, or the same being allowed to fall into so great a state of disrepair as to be untenantable. Buildings with significant vacancies for at least 2 consecutive years. Areas with buildings or improvements which, by reason of dilapidation, obsolescence, faulty arrangement or design, are detrimental to the safety, health, morals, or welfare of the community. Now, I said a lot of words there that are not nice to hear, right? They evoke pretty bad images of what you see on a site. And the statute allows a town to step into a place where the conventional development world does not allow the town to really step into. If you are seeing an area that just is characterized by these conditions, very likely the capital development community needs help from the town. As I said, I work in towns all over the state. And it's important to know that every single kind of town in the state uses the tools set forth in the redevelopment law. So people are turned off by this characterization of blight or redevelopment. Well, Princeton is the town that people use the term Princeton on properties in Hamilton and Ewing, because there is a vision that's evoked by the word Princeton. So you have this notion that, well, it's odd that Princeton might be a place in which you can use redevelopment. You can use it anywhere. You have to think about the property, not the town, right? We've done redevelopment projects in Plainsboro, Princeton, all over the place. AAA rated towns include sites that can be aided by the tools offered under the redevelopment law. So I want to encourage you not to be turned away by the notion of using a tool like redevelopment because you think of your town as perhaps better than that, right? I mean, nobody has said that to me specifically, but I just want to encourage you to think about redevelopment as a tool that's not too good for anybody. So I want to talk a little bit about control and flexibility. Control, the redevelopment law allows a town to control the zoning, which is what I sort of started with. You can target zoning to a specific site as opposed to what you can do under the municipal land use law, like spot zoning. You can control who will develop a site. Under the municipal land use law, conventional zoning, once you have implemented the zoning regulation, you've really done what you can as a town. And from there, it's really up to the owner of the property and the development community and either the planning board or the zoning board. But as a governing body, you've really already spoken, and now you just sort of step back and watch it unfold or not. The redevelopment process, including the zoning, can be as broad or narrow as you like. Zoning regulations are set forth in what's called a redevelopment plan. And that plan will include, as I said before, like the uses that will be permitted on the site, density and other bulk standards. You can include architectural and site design standards to a degree that you really don't see in conventional zoning regulatory schemes. You can require infrastructure and open space requirements that, again, are sort of more intense and broad than you would see in a normal zoning regulatory regime. More flexible parking standards if called for. This is really one of the things we've seen a lot over the years as transit-oriented development has really risen to prominence, where typically towns would, in zoning ordinances, identify particular zoning standards. And then what we sort of learned over time is that those standards have become antiquated as people started to take mass transit more, but the zoning regulations never really caught up with it in the conventional zoning world. So you see more flexibility incorporated into redevelopment plans than you might see in conventional zoning regulatory regimes. Flexibility. You can, as I said, identify, control who is going to develop the site. Towns can determine who is going to develop a site that's been designated a redevelopment area and has been made subject to a redevelopment plan. In many instances, it's an owner of a property or a contract purchaser. It doesn't have to be, though. Towns can identify who they think the best party to achieve the town's vision for the site is. And the town can undertake, if it prefers, a public solicitation process to identify who that developer or those developers might be, or a town can select a specific redeveloper that for one reason or another has emerged as the best candidate in the town's view to develop that site. Maybe they have a particular expertise that sort of jives with your vision. Maybe they just have a particular interest in that property, and they or you as a town have a particular positive body of experience with them, and you want to take advantage of that and use them in this new area. But again, you as the town have the ability under the redevelopment law to select that party. You can negotiate for terms even beyond what the redevelopment plan itself requires. Just by way of example, you can have a minimum density and then you can negotiate with the redeveloper for more than that, or a minimum parking requirement, but then determine that for whatever reason you think more is necessary and you can negotiate for more than that. So the ability in the redevelopment law to negotiate terms with a proposed developer offers the town a level of flexibility that the conventional zoning world really does not allow you to use. It offers you to use financial tools, the opportunity to use financial tools that aren't available outside the context of the redevelopment law. In many instances, undertaking projects in redevelopment areas is uniquely challenging. Maybe the site is burdened by buildings that will be very expensive to demolish, or burdened by environmental contamination that will be really expensive for a developer to clean up, or other site constraints. Maybe there's an additional burden of financing affordable housing units that other projects might not be required to incorporate into their projects. These things all add costs to projects that conventional projects don't typically face. And when they do, that makes them hard to undertake. And the town in the redevelopment context has some financial tools available to it that can help make projects financeable that are not otherwise feasible to build. Some of those tools are pilots and redevelopment area bonds. Now, I want to point out again, these two subjects are the subject of multi-day or multi-hour seminars. So I'm just going to speak about them for a couple of minutes. But a development cost that burdens all projects is ongoing property taxes. So if you take a project in a redevelopment area that's already financially stressed, one of the tools that towns have available to it is to relieve that burden on this particular development and hopefully then close what could be a financing gap and make this project now feasible. So the town would exempt the property from conventional property taxes, and in exchange, the redeveloper is required to pay a town a pilot or an annual service charge. Pilot is payment in lieu of tax. But so there's this common misconception that if a developer gets a pilot program, it gets to take advantage of a pilot program, that they aren't making payments. They are making payments. So it's typically less than what the conventional taxes would be, and that's by design. That's the way in which the town makes a project that's infeasible feasible. But it is a cost to the developer and then ultimately to the owner or tenant of the project. But so it's lower usually for the developer and ultimately for the residents and the tenants. But because the town is able under the statute to keep 95% of each of the pilot dollars that are paid to the town, it typically yields a higher return for the town. So while it helps a developer close a financing gap, it typically means more revenue from the town than the town would get from the conventional tax dollars generated by the completed project without the redevelopment program. So if you imagine a scenario where a town typically gets 20% of every conventional tax dollar, if you implement a pilot program under which the developer will pay some fraction of the conventional tax dollars, but you as a town are getting 95% of those tax dollars now instead of 20% of them, the town will typically realize more from a pilot program than it would from a conventional tax program. In addition to that, the town has the flexibility to use those pilot dollars how it sees fit. So you can, if you choose, target those funds for specific improvements, whether it's an infrastructure improvement or some other particular thing that the town is doing now, you can use them to offer town-wide tax relief so that if you're getting more tax dollars from these properties than you otherwise would, it should either actually affirmatively relieve the tax burden on the rest of the town, or at the very least, not add to it. Lastly, one of the things that is sort of a hot button issue now is schools. There is a common misconception that if a municipality implements a pilot program in a town, that the school is going to get shorted because of that. Towns always get 100% of their levy anyway, so they're not going to get less money. And what the town can do is share some of the pilot dollars that come in from a particular site that the town is not required to now share with the school board, but they can if the circumstances warrant it. In many instances, what you see is a town do something like for pilot dollars that come in, the town will make an agreement with the school board that it will share a certain amount of the dollars with that school board. And sometimes that formula is driven by, that's agreed upon, is driven by number of school kids that are actually generated from a particular project, or some other formula that just the town and the school board think fairly deals with the children that are generated by that particular project. One of the other financial tools that's available in the redevelopment context is redevelopment area bonds. Typically, a town can borrow money more cheaply than a developer can. So I talked a minute ago about how a development, a project can be burdened by costs that make it infeasible to undertake that project. One of the things that a town can do in order to reduce the ongoing costs for the developer is to finance some part of the project more cheaply than the developer can. That will reduce the developer's ongoing debt service obligation and potentially shrink or eliminate a financing gap, and thereby making the project now financeable. So sometimes you see a town do this for an infrastructure need that's generated by the project. I've actually worked on some projects where the town issued bonds to finance part of the project itself. The project was so important to the town that the town financed the acquisition, remediation, relocation costs for these foundational development costs that would normally be the burden of the developer. The project was so important to the town that the town helped finance those improvements. Most of the time where you see a town do this, though, you see them finance infrastructure improvements, whether it's road widening or traffic light installation or something like that, something that the developer has to do that it would cost them X amount of dollars, but a town could finance it for something less than that. And so the town sort of steps up and finances this particular improvement. The bottom line here is that the redevelopment law is a tool that municipalities all throughout the state take advantage of to help developers undertake projects that are important to the developers and the towns. So I always encourage my municipal clients when they're thinking about redevelopment projects, it must be important to you because you've already decided that you need to take these steps in order to make this development possible, right? So I would encourage you when you're thinking about these projects, not to think about what the developer gets if you do this project. Think about what you as the town don't get if you don't do this project. Usually you're not going to get a challenged site developed. You're not going to potentially get some of your affordable housing obligation fulfilled. You're not going to get needed infrastructure improvements. But as I said, it's obviously a project that you as a town think is important to undertake, and you're saying to the developer and to the community at large, it's important enough that we're going to take advantage of these tools that are available to us to make this project possible. That's my spiel. Happy to answer any questions you may have, but hope it helps.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll let council ask questions first, and then we'll go to the audience. Any council questions for Kevin at the moment? Okay, our municipal planner is also on the call. Michael, did you have any points that you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mayor. I did, but Kevin was so thorough. I don't have much else to say. It was a great refresher. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
I would just add that from a planning perspective, I've always seen the redevelopment statute and power as really that word power. It empowers the community. I know that in my daily work as a planner and working with the planning board and the other boards, citizens get very frustrated sometimes that zoning is somewhat limited in terms of predicting what the outcome will be. I mean, we limit bulk requirements and the uses on a site and height and things like that. But a lot of times in towns like Princeton particularly, people are very concerned about the quality of what the project will be, not only in terms of design, but how it adds to and enhances our community in so many ways, whether it's providing needed housing, adding to the tax base and adding to ratables to offset the burden of property taxes on residents, things like that. And what's wonderful about the redevelopment statute is that it gives us this added power. And particularly in terms of design, because that's my background, I always am concerned about that. The municipal land use law is very limited in giving really boards and staff latitude about design. We do here in Princeton, we talk to applicants before the planning board at a very early stage to try to help shape projects and make them the best they can be. But we can only ask a lot of times. If they meet the basic zoning requirements, they can move forward. And this is a wonderful way to not only craft a better outcome, but if there's important aspects of a site that, for instance, the community wants to maintain, like an open space, an existing open space, or some other physical characteristics, or a historic element on the site, things like that, we can write that in as design standards and guidelines. So I think it's a very exciting, empowering opportunity to use redevelopment in town.
Thank you, Michael.
Mayor, can I expand on something that Michael mentioned that I just wanted to touch on? So I mentioned in my presentation that redevelopment is a multi-step process, and it usually you would see action taken at 7 to 10 public meetings or so. And I just wanted to take a moment, if I could, and talk about some of those actions. So the process begins when the governing body adopts a resolution authorizing a study. That action happens at a public meeting. The study is then prepared by a land use planner. That study is reviewed by the local planning board at a public hearing. It then comes back to the governing body of the town that, if it's inclined to designate the area, does so by resolution. That happens at a public meeting. Then they can move on to a redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan is reviewed by the planning board. By statute, they have to review it and then make their recommendations to the governing body. The governing body then approves a redevelopment plan by an ordinance. That happens at 2 public meetings. Then if the town continues down the road with this process, it's going to identify a redeveloper. It's going to negotiate an agreement with that redeveloper. The municipality is going to make that designation of the redeveloper and approve that agreement by resolution. That happens at a public meeting. That redeveloper then will go through the site plan process, which means they're going to the planning board, who's going to hear their application at a public meeting. So there is a series of public meetings that happen at the governing body level and at the planning board level. And I think when you sort of hear this, what I think of as a misconception sometimes about the redevelopment deals sort of happening in the dark of night, and I don't know how to reconcile that with the 7 or 8 things I just mentioned that all happen at public meetings subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, and you got the Open Public Records Act and so on. So I wanted to just put a little bit of specific color to the thing that I just mentioned generally earlier tonight and emphasize the public nature of this process.
Thank you, Kevin. Eve?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Michael. So let me just, Kevin, give you an example. If this were happening in your town, there was going to be redevelopment process in your town. As a citizen of the town, what would your concerns be, if any? Like, I think there's a lot of concern in town about redevelopment, and I think you've certainly assuaged a lot of that, but is this something you would greet with open arms because of your understanding of how it worked, or would you have concerns?
Yeah, I mean, being involved in the process on the municipal end and with the redeveloper end sometimes, I don't understand. I mean, you can disagree with a vision. The concern I would have is the vision. Is the vision that the town is trying to see realized there something that I agree with? And if it is, I would wholeheartedly support it. And if I didn't, I'd be showing up at the public meetings and I would express my concern about it. And I know the public body members would at least hear me because I know I have many opportunities to voice my concern. I have been to more public meetings than I can count dealing with redevelopment issues. And in some instances, I've seen towns change course because there was enough movement in the public at large that the town realized that the vision that was articulated by a few members of the town wasn't shared by the town at large. And even if the members there sort of had the heart was in the right place, everybody just disagreed with it. And I think, in my view, that meant that the process worked. Not everybody has to share the same vision, but as I said, you are by definition talking about that problems that even if they aren't, the conventional blight in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s were sort of slums and things like that. And that's not what we think about in redevelopment anymore. I mean, by definition, redevelopment means you're redeveloping a site that was probably developed before, but now is challenged, and you need to step in and help along the way. And if the town is advancing a vision that is generally consistent with what the town wants, it's all upside as far as I can see. As I said, control and flexibility. I think you're surrendering those things in the conventional development world, and I don't understand why you wouldn't want to use them if you could.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wait,
Mayor, just want to ask Kevin if maybe he can mention something about the limitations when it comes to the governing body dealing with redevelopment. I think in our town, there's certain developers sometimes when their name comes up, some people have long memories and some people may have not the fondest view of certain developers. And I just want to see if you can share with the public, certain limitations that the governing body may have, because sometimes some things happen and folks would begin to criticize, saying, well, because they already have a negative view of a certain developer, et cetera, they start to criticize the governing body when certain things go a certain way in the project. I don't know if you want to touch on maybe limitations of what the governing body has and, what maybe some leverage that developers may have.
Sure. So what?
Can I just ask, Dwayne, is your question whether the governing body has more control over a developer in the redevelopment process versus the zoning?
Well, the question is with redevelopment, Kevin talked about all the wonderful advantages for the governing body when it comes to redevelopment. I just want to see if he can touch on I'm just thinking of our history here in town, of what limitations may be there when it comes to how governing bodies deal with developing the companies who are doing the redevelopment.
Sure. One of the most obvious ones that jumps out at me is site control. You still have, I would say that the vast majority of the redevelopment projects that I still work on, the developer that's undertaking the development in concert with the town, and I think of it as a partnership effort, that developer has some demonstrated, identifiable legal interest in the property. They either own it or they have a contract to buy it from the party that does own it. The redevelopment law does empower municipalities to use the power of eminent domain to wrest the property from a property owner if it needs to do that in order to get it into the hands of somebody who is going to develop it. But there are issues associated with that. Sometimes they are just conceptual or political issues, right? You just don't want to use the power of eminent domain because it has such a negative connotation to it. It also can be more time consuming and costly than simply allowing the contract purchaser or the property owner to develop it themselves. So one of the most obvious challenges tonight is site control. So when you ask about limitations, and as I said, that site control is probably it. And then one of the other ones is just feasibility. And that's the reason why I think those tools are offered, pilots and redevelopment area bonds. But again, those are sometimes uphill battles to get them approved, but those are the probably most significant challenges. Does that answer your question?
Sure does. Thanks.
Mia?
And just following up on the site plan review, my understanding is that once the redevelopment plan is approved, then the developer still has to go through site plan review, the normal site plan, the full site plan review, preliminary and final, and so on and so forth, at the planning board in the way that it normally would, in the way that the developer normally would.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Michelle?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. This is a great overview. I just want to go back and just see if we can expand a little bit on a really important point Michael brought up as well. We talked about the pilots and incentivizing, of course, the developer to develop a property that may have certain criteria and certain issues with it. But can you go back to another piece that's really important for us on this committee is that we're really looking at what are the public benefits and the additional things that we can negotiate,
Sure.
and how that will help us in terms of the site plan and development.
Yep.
Can you just expand on that a little bit? Thanks.
Sure. Great question. So one of the things that I thought about in the difference between conventional development and redevelopment, in the conventional development world, the developer is going to go to the planning board with their site plan approval, and the planning board has the ability to impose certain requirements on them to build infrastructure improvements that are really generated by the project itself. But there are limitations on the ability of the planning board to require infrastructure improvements, and the redevelopment context allows a town to negotiate with the developer to do more than the planning board is otherwise empowered to do. So there's like the rational nexus between the project and whatever the improvement is that the planning board wants to impose as a requirement on the developer. You don't really have that in the redevelopment context. Or I mean, that still applies in the planning board stage, but as a municipality, you can negotiate with a developer to do more than what the plan requires and more than what the normal body of law permits you to impose on them as a requirement. Is that what you're getting at? Is that your question? Yeah.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time talking with some of the earlier projects about, bike paths and bus shelters and all those kinds of things like that are probably way more intense in what we talked about there than you would normally see in the development context, right? They were very important features of project to the town. And so we spent a pretty good amount of time negotiating with the developer about that. And you see that in the agreement that was executed. So that's where you see that memorialized. Is it happens that in that instance, before they even get to planning board, they're making a commitment to the town to do something that you could not make them do outside the context of the redevelopment law.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at, because, it's not just compelling the feasibility of it from a financial standpoint, but it's compelling the developer to do these additional benefits for the public good.
That's right.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
Mayor, I just wanted to add something to Kevin's comments that's, I think, is important. Most times when people come through the conventional way of doing things and are just applying the site plan standards and the zoning, we are reacting to a design that's already been formulated before it got to the public realm. So we're forced to react to it. What's wonderful about the redevelopment process is that from the very beginning, you're shaping a project in partnership with the developer. So it's a very different relationship. From the outset, you're not just reacting to a partially cooked or maybe even fully cooked idea. You're there at the outset, being able to set the stage, whether, so that going back to my comments earlier about if there's a really important feature that the community wants preserved, or certain attributes of the site that are important or that should be part of a plan, that can be put in right at the beginning instead of us having to react to something that's already on paper.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Are there any members of the public that have questions on this topic? Again, general questions. We're not talking about any specific site, and very especially, we're not talking about the Princeton Shopping Center, North Harrison, Clearview site, because the resolution on that is tomorrow night at tomorrow night's meeting. So if anyone from the public has a question, please raise your hand. And
no hands raised at this time.
okay.
Oh, we got one hand. Two hands.
Okay.
Okay, we have Michael Floyd who'd like to talk.
Okay, bring him in. Thank you.
Okay, Michael.
Just all right, you can hear me. Couple questions for Kevin. Could you explain to me the basic formula for computing the pilot under the long-term exemption law? Is it, is it net income, gross income? Are there minimum percentages?
Yep.
Things like
Yeah,
that.
sure. Yep. Good question. So with respect to pilots, the long-term tax exemption law enables you to structure pilots one of a couple different ways. You can either frame it as a function of annual gross revenue or a percentage of the total project cost. So if you imagine a rental project of some sort, whether it's a warehouse or a retail shopping center or an apartment building, the developer owner is going to realize a certain amount of revenue over the course of a year, and you can negotiate for the pilot to be a percentage of that annual gross revenue. For projects that are affordable housing projects, the maximum amount of that is 15% of gross revenue. For all other projects, the minimum is 10% of gross revenue. And then that same dynamic applies if you frame the pilot as a percentage of project cost. So there are different kinds of projects that would under which you would or for which you would structure the pilot differently. But generally speaking, the gross revenue is probably one of the more common ones that you would see. You asked about net revenue. That's an important thing to remember, because after the town and the developer negotiate for whatever the applicable pilot formula is going to be, that pilot formula is going to yield an amount each year. Each year, the municipality is going to measure that amount against some escalating percentage of otherwise applicable taxes. Through that process, you are able to basically ensure that you're that the town is still getting a fair portion of those revenues, right? If you agreed to a pilot formula that had a percentage on the low end, and then for some reason that project is killing it, and we're actually seeing this kind of thing happen now for deals that we struck for warehouses, for example, a couple of years ago that we thought were really good deals for the town. Well, a lot of people know the warehouse industry absolutely exploded a few years ago, and developers of warehouse projects are realizing revenues that far exceed what they projected they would realize a few years ago. So now when we measure our pilot formula amount versus some escalating percentage of the otherwise applicable taxes for that property, that might be the number that we're going to get now, that the otherwise applicable tax number. So that is a check that protects the town to make sure that you're still getting what we think is a fair part of the deal, even years after you've struck the deal. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. Very well. Thank you. Another question I had related to the law itself. Does it put limitations, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, on profits, annual profits, in the agreement of the owner?
It does. So the entity, if you're going to, as a town, if you're going to approve a pilot program for a developer, that developer has to create what's known as a limited dividend entity. It's going to have a certain name. It's got to have a certain formation document to it. But by statute, that developer is subjecting itself to a cap on the amount of profit that it can realize each year. And as a second check in favor of the municipality is that you go through a net profit calculation to determine whether that developer has realized more profit than the statute permits it to. And if it does, then the developer has to pay that excess amount to the town as an additional pilot. And the theory behind that is the town went out on a limb and approved a pilot program for a developer, and you don't want that developer now reaping this spectacular financial benefits after approving that pilot program. So you are capping their ability to realize profit, and the town gets the excess.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Adam, who's next?
Okay, next we have Jill John, or Jan. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Apologies.
Okay. Jill?
Thank you. John is correct.
All
Owning
right.
something means that you can sell it. So if at any point the owner, developer of a property that's been designated as an area in need of development decides that they want to sell it, do any of the restrictions in the original agreement with the town carry over to subsequent owners? Or do they have more freedom than the original developer of the property did?
So it depends on when that theoretical sale might happen. If a town designates a property as part of an area in need of redevelopment, and somebody owns property in that designated area, that designation and the zoning and the redevelopment plan is going to apply, even if the owner sells it to another person. Now, in that instance, there has been no project built yet. If we now imagine a scenario where a developer and a town enter into a redevelopment agreement, redeveloper builds whatever the project is, so now it's completed, the developer has some freedom to sell that project to somebody else. But of course, they've already built the project, so I'm not sure that a town would have a particular interest in stopping a developer from doing that. It's pretty common for a developer to sell a project that they've built. They've sort of created this value and now they want to sell it and get out. And so that you have to sort of think about the different stage of the project's life that this potential sale is occurring in. Is that what you're getting at with your question, ma'am?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, if let's say in the whole process of the town agreeing to the eventual design and all of that, if the developer decides, oh, this is just too hard, taking too long, whatever, and they want to sell it, does a new buyer have to follow the same agreement that the town originally set up with the first developer?
So they do, unless they want to start over again. Like they are going to be subject to the same regulations in the zoning and in the redevelopment plan that the first party was subject to. So if in your example, if you're the owner of a property and you're trying to negotiate an agreement with the town and you just can't come to a meeting of the minds, and you decide to sort of cut bait and sell the property to some other party, that other party is going to have to come in and still negotiate with the town to try and get the divisions on the same page and hopefully execute an agreement. One of the things that does happen with some degree of frequency is that a developer and a town will enter into a redevelopment agreement. So you've already done the zoning and the plan, you've negotiated an agreement with the redeveloper, and then that redeveloper will decide not to build the project themselves, but will instead sell it to another developer who's going to build that project. I mean, in that instance, that transferee developer is going to build the project that the town and the original developer already scoped out and agreed to. So the regulations that govern the zoning and or the provisions of an executed redevelopment agreement will follow the property essentially.
Thank you.
And just to tag on to that, what typically happens to the tax exemption, long-term tax exemption and pilot in those circumstances?
Sure. So if you've approved a pilot for a project and a developer wants to sell it, that pilot program will still apply even to the entity to which the project is transferred. That entity, the transferee entity, will have to create its own limited dividend entity. So all of the pilot program terms will apply to the new entity, including the limitation on profits that we talked about a few minutes ago. And for that reason, the new entity has to create its own separate limited dividend entity.
Thank you. Adam, who's next?
All right, we've got Ken Carson.
Hey, Ken.
Ken, if you could unmute.
Hi.
Thank you.
This is actually Jen Carson, Ken's wife. Hi. So my question, I have a couple of questions. Number one, thank you so much, Kevin, for explaining the process of redevelopment. It was really clear. I like that you explained it from the point of view of the citizen, the point of view of the owner. I'm curious, what are the pros and cons for tenants? And my second question would be, approximately how long does this whole process generally take? It sounds like it's many, many years.
Yeah, it certainly can be years. I've done it in places. There are towns where I do work on the municipal side, and they are deeply experienced, and they can get through the redevelopment and approval process in a period of months. And so it varies, I would say, from town to town and project type to project type. In the example that I'm thinking of right now, it's an industrial town, and they could, they're doing a lot of warehouse work, and they sort of can do that fairly rapidly. There are not a lot of dimensions to it, so it's not the kind of they aren't the kind of projects that in and of themselves generate a lot of issues. So you can sort of move through them pretty quickly, and there's been a lot of continuity of the same players. In other instances, you have towns. After 2015, when the affordable housing world changed and you started to do them through these court actions, and towns started to try and take more control over it by going to court and so on, and then towns started to try and utilize the redevelopment process to satisfy their affordable housing obligation. You just saw some of the issues that were created by this. They changed. And so sometimes it takes a little longer because you're not just talking about now somebody building a warehouse or somebody building an apartment complex. It's you're really working hard to incorporate affordable housing into it, or somehow just sort of rationalize it around the rest of the town. And so the fastest you can do it really is probably half a year. And I think that's fast. So you should expect it to take a pretty good amount of time. But again, it's going to vary from town to town and project to project. And so I beg your pardon. I think I answered your second question, and in doing so, I forgot your first one.
The pros and cons for tenants.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about tenants of existing buildings that have been designated as redevelopment areas?
Correct.
Yeah. So a couple of different things. Number one, if the town is going to exercise the power of eminent domain to acquire the property that is tenanted, then the tenants have statutory rights. The town will have to follow relocation regulations and statutes that govern when and how they can do, how they have to behave toward those tenants. The town has to basically make them whole, give them a new place to operate. One of the things that I've seen happen as a practical matter in some towns is a developer might try and strike a deal with a tenant or tenants in an existing building and offer them the opportunity to occupy space within the redeveloped building. That can be a pretty good deal for both the tenant and the developer, who now doesn't need to go out and beat the bushes and find a tenant for that. So if there's it's sort of on the same page about what your tenancy is relative to what the project is ultimately going to be, you might be able to strike some kind of deal. And again, it probably varies between commercial tenants and residential tenants. Again, as a tenant, somebody has rights that you might not have otherwise. And so you're protected by relocation obligations and also sometimes just the practicalities of what it takes to build a project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, Kevin. Adam, who's next?
Okay, next we have Dale Mead.
Dale?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, Dale.
Okay. Thank you very much for holding this meeting and making it available. I was a little late attending because I had some difficulty getting through what looked like a new format. My computer thought that this is an insecure network, etc. But I finally made it at about 7:40. So I will look, and I heard the last part of Kevin's introduction on this process, and I found that very informative. So I will go back and on YouTube go through the first part. When Kevin was talking about the kind of 7-step process, public meetings were involved in almost every stage of that. And one of my great concerns about the present project and the first few steps that we've taken is that Zoom.
Hey, Dale, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you might have missed the opening where we said this is about, and maybe you're going here, but just in case, this is about areas in need of redevelopment in general and not any specific project. And
yes.
And especially we're not going to talk specifically about the shopping center this evening, because that's for tomorrow night's agenda. So just in case you were going there, if you weren't, sorry to interrupt.
I probably would have a little further on down the line. But on the process itself, public meetings, you said, were a key part of this. And it's my firm belief that the way you are now holding Zoom meetings are not really public meetings. And I've talked to a number of people about this, and I'm getting support for how to get this addressed. I attend probably 10, maybe 15 Zoom meetings a week. These are Zoom meetings involving 150 people or more, and from around the world, basically. And one of the things that is essential for all these meetings is to know who the participants are. The town Zoom meetings block the participants list. I assume that you, as members of the council, actually are able to see the participants list. Somebody's looking at it. I think that participants list must be opened up if you're to consider this a public meeting. That's important because people who are participants need to know how some of the other participants are. If this were a true public meeting held in the town hall, we'd be able to see who else was there, who else was interested in this issue, be able to then go and talk to them in the hallways and initiate a discussion. That's what a public meeting is about. So I would further ask that you enable the chat feature so that people can chat back and forth individually. I've seen that done on meetings, as I said, with 100 or more people around the world. It works just fine. The meetings aren't disrupted. It works just fine. It's the same as going out in the hallway to talk about an issue. So I appeal for to do that as a general feature. And the only thing I'll say is that regarding the particular reasons we're all here is on the process involved with the Princeton project at the moment. We've gone through the first 2 steps, maybe 3, and quite frankly, they're very concerning because some of the things that have appeared in the consultant's report, in the public media, etc., has given citizens a great deal of angst as to, first of all, what is the scale of this project? Because what happened with the report by the consultants is he made it look like a total disaster.
So Dale,
yes?
I'm sorry, if you're trying to talk about the specific report, again, for the shopping center and the related properties, we're not going to just.
I'm again kind of on the edge of where trying to deal with some general problems and issues that people had. And that's one. What is the scale of this project? You know, is it $1 million, 10 million, 100 million? People need to know what you're talking generally about soon. And in particular, on the matter of what people are concerned about, I'm concerned, as you might imagine, about property taxes. And what I've seen is this is such a complicated process. We've just been talking about how to deal with pilot programs and so on. And if you look at the types of cases that have been in various courts around the state of New Jersey, there are lots of difficulties municipalities have gotten into and entanglements with poorly prepared agreements, and they've been taken advantage of. The towns have been taken advantage of. And yes, you can go back and perhaps renegotiate some of these things, but the legal costs will run you right out of town. So this is a very complicated process. We need to know what the general scale is. And before we get too far down the line, hopefully there will be a very ironclad, tight financial plan that will assure us exactly what we're getting into. And I believe I'm correct in this. Kevin can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I believe all these pilot agreements are required to submit an annual audit to see that the terms are being carried out by the developer, et cetera. Is that correct?
It is, and what I was talking about a couple of minutes ago was this sort of check on the developer's ability to realize a certain amount of net profit. And above that threshold, they have to remit the excess to the town. It's those audit reports that they're supposed to submit annually that helps the town determine whether those limitations are being complied with.
And so again, this is on the process part. The town has several pilots already in that they are working on. Have we done the audits on those?
I'm not sure which projects you mean, but yeah.
Well, there are several of them that I actually made an Oprah request 3 or 4 years ago, and I got a list of about 8. I was about ready to make another one, but then I wouldn't get a response in time for this meeting. But we have ongoing pilot projects, and we should be auditing those. I would feel more comfortable if somebody could confirm that we actually are auditing them.
Yeah, Dale, we'll get an answer for you.
Yeah.
Right. So I so far have a list of things that we need to get back to you on. I don't want to get into the pros and cons of should participants see other participants? Should the chat feature be on or off? I don't want to get into that tonight, but I think we have some pre-existing legal opinions. We'll dig those out and we'll make sure we have those.
And again, the scale of what I know we're talking about is presently the taxes on the properties involved are about 1.3 million a year. And I actually, after the planning board meeting the other night, I started looking around to see what other
All right,
projects.
Dale, sounds to me like you're talking about a specific project that we're not talking about tonight. So I need to ask you not to go there, please. But do you have any other questions, General?
Are we going to be able to do that tomorrow night?
Yeah, tomorrow night is, yes, tomorrow. Yeah, that's why that's why we can't do it tonight, because we need everything to be on the record for the official meeting on that specific topic, which is tomorrow night.
It would have been helpful if the agenda that was sent out for this meeting had a very clear introduction as to what, instead of blank pieces of paper on the web. But anyway, tomorrow night then.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Adam, who's next?
Okay, so next we have Tineka as our last speaker.
Okay.
Okay, I have some questions about,
Tineka?
yeah, can you hear me?
Barely. Can you speak a little louder or get the microphone?
Okay. I have a question about pilots. I'd like to know how long these pilot agreements typically go and what happens after that.
So however long they last, afterwards, they revert back to conventional taxation. Most of the pilot agreements that I work on run for 30 years. In some instances, they're run for less than that. I've done a handful for probably 10, 15, 23 years like that, but the vast majority of them are 30 years.
Tineka, is that the only question?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right, Adam, that's the last hand that was up?
Confirmed, there's no one else with their hands up.
Okay, terrific. Thank you all. Anybody else on council? Any other? Mia?
Yeah, Kevin, can you just give sort of an explanation or, let some sort of description of the interaction between, you talked about the interaction between the municipality and the developer. Could you sort of talk about how the public is involved in the redevelopment process and how their input is solicited in terms of creating a redevelopment plan?
Sure. So that can vary from town to town. I'm certainly aware of towns where they really don't actively seek it out and they just sort of craft it on their own and they go ahead. Now, when they do that, they still undertake these steps at public body meetings, and there may not be a level of interest in that. In towns where there is a high level of interest, and there are these multiple public meetings at which these interested individuals can offer their thoughts about whether the town's vision for the area is on the right track or not. Certainly, the town is engaging and using the services of a professional planner who's a professional governed by standards and how they behave and the way they do their job. So that's something that sort of, I think, protects the public in that manner. But the designation of the redevelopment area happens at a hearing in front of the planning board conducts a hearing at which interested members of the public can offer their thoughts and comments and ask questions and so on. The redevelopment plan itself is adopted by ordinance, the process by which includes a public hearing where members of the public can offer their thoughts about the inclusion of provisions in a redevelopment plan or the lack of inclusion of desirable provisions in that plan. Every other kind of step that a town can take to solicit or consider thoughts by members of the public is something beyond that, which is required by statute. And so that body of experience is different all over the place. The extent to which you could solicit and involve public comment into that just varies from town to town and sometimes from project to project. So it's really, there's no specific roadmap for it. It's just what's your preference for the process.
Thank you.
Okay. In the interest of time, I think we've answered everybody's questions. So Kevin, this has been extremely helpful. We appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you.
Michael, thanks to you also for joining us. So anyway, thanks and have a great evening, and we're going to move on with the.
Thanks, Mayor. I was planning to stick around for one of the ordinances. It's on for second reading tonight anyway, but.
Okay, great.
You.
It's just your lucky night.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the public hearing on the 2021 municipal budget. Bob, would you just like to kick us off on that, and we'll get into that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Tonight will be is our advertised public hearing on the budget. As council's aware, it is a $66 million budget this year. And our challenge this year was the reduction in revenue from parking and court and a much of other areas, mainly due to the pandemic. To that end, we are still evaluating how we can utilize the rescue funds coming from the federal government. We've gotten some modest input from the state, but we have no definitive direction. I know that Sandy contacts them probably every other day. We've reached out to colleagues in other communities to try to get a handle on what they are doing. But to give council just some comfort level with where we are, it would appear that when we get ready to adopt the budget, that the state to recommend that we take the revenue, whatever it is that we're going to qualify for, which we believe will be very near or at the $3 million allocation that we're scheduled to receive. And that would come into the budget as a miscellaneous revenue not anticipated. And throughout the year, sure, council remembers those revenues. Typically, they're not $3 million. They are revenues that would end up coming into the town's budget, and it would probably revert back into surplus at some juncture if we don't utilize it, which we would have no intention of doing. That money that's coming in is really to offset, again, the parking revenues and other revenue shortfalls that we had, and we have a list of those that we're monitoring so that when we get ready to make that claim, we have all the sufficient documentation. So for tonight, we're asking the council to open the public hearing. Mr. Mayor, if anyone wants the budget, they're certainly able to do so. It was advertised as a public hearing. And then at the conclusion of that, not to close the public hearing, but to continue the public hearing to the May date. At that time, we will have the remainder of our budget modification. Finance Committee knows the majority of the larger ones. The small items that Sandy fine tuning will all be included in that document. And then we'll make a determination as to whether or not we are able to adopt that evening. That will come from the state, or whether or not we need to hold it over for another 2 weeks. And also, just to give everybody a comfort level, because I know this was asked at the Finance Committee, we will not be adopting the budget in conjunction with the state's calendar, but we are among hundreds of communities that are not able to adhere to that calendar just because we don't have guidance from the state of New Jersey. So with that, I'll see if Sandy has any comments he wants to give you on it, and we can open the public hearing if not.
Thank you. Sandy?
No, I just to kind of follow up on what Bob said, you know, we'll continue to hold the public hearing for the next meeting. We have some modest budget reductions that we'll make as amendments to the budget. And one of the things, I don't know, Michelle, if you wanted to mention it or you wanted me to mention it, but certainly one of the things that we're going to reduce is going to be our debt service. That's going to come down a little bit because of the refunding bond sale that we held last year. We're going to save about $956,000 over the next 7 years for that bond sale. So that's certainly something that we're looking forward to seeing the budget down a little bit on.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's really great, great work that you and the team and Bob and everyone did. So we're lucky we're in, in the shape that we're in, and we're able to hold to the 2.1 million. And luckily for the American Rescue Plan money, we should be able to avoid completely raising taxes or really having to cut anything too drastically. So, but we have cut quite a bit from the budget in terms of trimming. So thank you so much for that.
David.
This is just a question for Trishka. Do we need a motion to adopt the budget before we hold the public hearing?
We're not adopting tonight. We're just holding the public.
Yeah, I know we're not adopting it, but I wasn't sure if the motion to adopt precedes the public hearing.
No, typically you would have the public hearing first.
Right.
Right. Okay, any other council questions before we go to the public? Seeing none. Adam, can you bring in let's see who has hands up.
Okay, we have Bainey Surrey. That's the only hand up.
Okay. Bainey?
Hi, so I think I'm unmuted, but
You are.
Okay, I am. So I would just echo the comments that the last speaker made about the meetings being accessible to people. I really struggled to get the Zoom link, to get access to the agenda, and I would love to connect with Dale. I don't even know his last name. And if I had been at a meeting live, I would be able to approach him when it ended. The other thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly was just to ask that it's totally appropriate, Mayor Frida, for you to expect people to be respectful to council, but the residents of this town are not elected officials, and I do think it's appropriate for the elected officials to treat the residents with the same amount of respect. It's also okay for residents to ask questions and for residents to express dissatisfaction with the behavior of their elected officials. That's what politics is about. And I feel this sense of chill that you can't criticize the government, even if you come with a appropriate tone, even if you come calm and relaxed.
Bainey?
Yes?
Bainey, I'm sorry, but I'm about to do something that you're probably complaining about. But we're having the public hearing on the budget. Do you have anything on the budget? Because I'm happy.
Okay.
I'm happy to listen to your comments.
No, you know
just
what?
A little.
I apologize. And I can bring these comments up at another public meeting when it's appropriate. I struggle to figure out when to raise my hand, and maybe it's just me, but I didn't know when it's appropriate to talk about what. So let's table this discussion. I don't have budget things to talk about, and you and I are planning on meeting anyway. So let's have that meeting, and then I can bring this up at a different time. I don't have comments about the budget. I had comments generally about a program that I intend to run across Mercer County. But again, it doesn't sound like this is the appropriate time. And that's my fault for not understanding the agenda, but I must have checked for the agenda like 10 times and I was only able to get it an hour before the meeting.
Okay, so Bainey in general, and just for everyone else listening, if you want to bring up something and give us information on something that's not on the agenda, there's a section of the agenda called public comments for items not on the agenda. So that's general, that's usually where that would happen, just so you know for the future.
And I apologize. I actually thought that was now because when I looked at the agenda, it was the budget, and then right under the budget, it says public comments not on the agenda.
So it's literally the next thing when we get done.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then I can just wait until we get to that point.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Is there any public comment on the budget, the 2021 municipal budget? Okay, seeing none. Any other council comments? If not, would someone on the council like to, Eve, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want to extend a thank you to our finance committee, to Sandy, to Bob, and everyone who's worked really so hard on the budget and to try to bring to this community a flat tax after a really difficult year. So I'm not on the finance committee, but those who have just really gone above and beyond. So I just wanted to extend thanks. And then I'm happy to also make a motion to carry the public meeting till our next meeting on
May 10th.
May 10th? Yes, I would be happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Eve. Michelle, seconds? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we'll continue the public hearing on the 2021 municipal budget till May 10th. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda are public comments for items not on the agenda. And again, anybody can bring up something that's not on the agenda. There's a 3-minute limit. And do we have anyone with their hand up?
Okay,
Adam.
we do have Bainey Suri, who I'm sure would like to finish what she was saying.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so I just unmuted myself. I'll be really quick. I think that there should be an open discourse, as much transparency as possible for the residents to understand what our elected officials do, what hours you work, how much you're paid. I mean, I know the position is not one that anyone's doing because of the salary, but I think it's important for there to be an openness where people can come and express dissatisfaction. They don't have to be rude. I mean, I haven't used language ever to describe anyone on council or the mayor that I've heard used by other people that are on council. So I'm sort of upset to see it only go one way. There should be respect between council and residents, but it's important to remember that the elected officials are elected officials. The residents are not. And by being in that position, you are held to a different standard. And I would argue that it's more important that your behavior is appropriate and not just the residents. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is that I will be running a composting program called OK New Jersey Stop Waste Now. It's going to be open to all residents in the entire state. It'll run first in Mercer County. I hope it'll run in Princeton as well. It may or may not. But I am going to be running ads, and I want the public to know that there's a compost solution that's available immediately. It doesn't require hauling or fossil fuels. There's no smells. And in addition to supporting the municipal composting program, I also put the contract in place to compost the university's 9 dining halls. So I know a lot about compost. The solution has been vetted by Sustainable Jersey and the Mercer County Improvement Authority, and it's an excellent program. And I'm also going to be running a program to eliminate the use of toxins in New Jersey's parks. And finally, Mayor Frida, I hope that I can explore running an EV taxi service for low-income seniors and people that are disabled. All of these programs are going to run as pilots in Mercer County, across the county, and then they'll run across the state. And 10 years ago, when I came here, I said that I was going to work towards passing legislation at the state level on plastic pollution. And I am proud to share that New Jersey has now passed legislation that is the strictest in the entire nation. And Hopewell, Pennington, and Trenton all passed legislation. We did not in Princeton, so Wawa will pollute until May 2022, and we are now precluded from doing anything about that. It's amazing to think that that program started in Princeton, and we were one of the towns that wasn't able to pass an ordinance, even though we had an ordinance, and the PEC on record asked the town to pass it in 2014, and everyone on this council basically, indicated that it was a done deal, that it was going to happen, and it never happened. So I hope to see other programs still start in Princeton, but they don't need to finish in Princeton, because what's right is going to happen at the state level. And I am pleased to say that I met with Assemblyman Zwicker, Assemblyman Friedman, and Senator Bateman in December, and thanked all of them for their work on plastic. And I want people in Princeton to know that we do have good, green, bold leaders, certainly in our district. And I hope, Mayor Frida, you're a new mayor, and I've never worked with you before, so I hope there will be the opportunity to do some green programming. I have a lot of good ideas. And I'm also going to be talking to you about building a volunteer green team. I worked for Capitol Health for 3 years. Al Magazi is one of my mentors. And I built that team 75% in Trenton, 33% in Hopewell, 15 new programs. And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's manage a group of volunteers. And I want to see Princeton have a volunteer, unpaid green team, because we are the only town in the Mercer County coalition that doesn't have that. And if we had a volunteer green team, I do believe that Princeton could lead on green issues. So that's
Okay,
all I have to say. That's
okay,
it. I'm done.
Very
I'm
good.
done.
Thank you, Beatty.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mayor Frida.
Sure. Okay, so we're still under the public comment on items not on the agenda. Adam, do we have?
We do. We have Dale Mead ready to come back.
Okay, thank you. Dale?
I'm here. And now for something definitely not on the agenda. I just got an email from someone on Lake Drive who had received in their mailbox a notice that the fire department will be conducting drills at 600 Lake Drive tomorrow night, starting at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I don't know how many of you know about this. Apparently it'll also be done on April 29th at 6:30, probably again till 9 p.m. and again Saturday, May 1st, 10 a.m. to probably 1 p.m. Anyway, this is actually a very creative use of some of the tear downs that people have been creating around town. And so there's a tear down at that location.
Yep.
And the fire department is going to do some practicing.
Yep.
And I think you probably are going to be getting some calls from the neighbors in that area when they find out about this, because it's going to be a little nerve-wracking perhaps for the next door neighbors having gas-powered equipment and smoke machines and various noises going on out there in the dark, like it is kind of right now. So I think that was an ingenious idea to make use of the tear downs and get some experience for the firefighters. But it may need some more advanced warning to the residents, and may need quite a bit of extra survey, or what should I say, watch and security around the area while they're doing that at night. It could be, might even be dangerous in some respects. So anyway, and I know that's part of why they're practicing, is because they deal with real danger and a real fire. So again, that's it. Thank you very much again for your patience.
No, thank you, Dale. And as a volunteer with the fire department, we appreciate owners of properties giving the fire department the opportunity to get us all out there and practice things that we might not get to do on a regular basis. But anyway, thanks for pointing that out. Okay. Adam, that was it for hands up under?
That's everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's go to a public hearing on ordinance 2021-10, ordinance authorizing the execution of a revised financial agreement with Princeton Thanet Road Urban Renewal LLC under the long-term tax exemption law. Is this, Kevin, is this the one you were hanging around for?
It is, Mayor. Yeah.
Okay, did you, you or Mr. Brusheye or somebody do you have something to say, or you're just here?
Sure. I didn't plan on it, but if I can sort of summarize it if you like.
That would be great.
So around this time last year, the council approved a financial agreement between the town and Thanet Road Urban Renewal, which is the Avalon Bay entity. And there's a section in the agreement that relates to the payment during the construction period. So before when the pilots will commence when the project is actually constructed. But until that happens, what happens? So the revisions that you see identify the different payment obligations during the different stages here. Avalon Bay is going to take title to the property, then they're going to knock the buildings down, then they're going to build the project, and then the project is going to be done. And each of those different stages, there's sort of a different payment obligation. And the original version was really general, and this just identifies the specific payment obligations.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Do we have any council questions? on this? No. Okay. Is there anyone from the public with a question or comment on this?
No hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Does someone want to make a motion? David?
Yeah, I move that we adopt this ordinance modifying the agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dwayne has the second. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Dawn?
Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Next, we'll have the public hearing on ordinance 2021-11, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton concerning miscellaneous offenses and amending chapters 22 and 34 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and chapter 13 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Questions, comments by anyone on council on this one?
Everybody knows this is just reconciling the two codes so that they're harmonious.
We love harmony. Okay, are there any public questions or comments on this ordinance? All right, seeing no hands up, we'll close the public hearing on the ordinance and ask a member of council to make a motion. Leticia. Leticia moves the ordinance and Eve has the second. Thank you very much. It's another roll call vote.
Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Now we have
Mayor,
two.
if I may, this is Kevin. I think I'm done. I was going to sign off. I just wanted to see if you need anything else from me. Or...
No, get out while you can.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
All right, first ordinance introduction is ordinance 2021-12, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton concerning sewer connection fees and amending chapter 34 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Public hearing will be May 10th, 2021.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this increases our sewer fee for 2021. And this is just the connection portion of it, is not the sewer rate.
Thank you. Important detail. Any council questions? Is there a motion? Eve moves the introduction and Michelle has the second. All in favor, please. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a roll call vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes. Mayor, did we want to ask for public comment or no? Because it's just the introduction. Never
It's
mind.
just an introduction, yeah.
Never mind.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
Passes. The next introduction is ordinance 2021-13, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regarding appeals from decisions of the Historic Preservation Commission or Historic Preservation Officer and amending Chapter 10B Land Use of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. The public hearing will be on May 10th, 2021. I think Bob Pratt.
Mayor, I'm actually going to ask Trishka to explain this one. I'm not too well versed in on this one.
Sure, this is actually fairly simple housekeeping. The code, as it's currently drafted, anyone who wants to appeal a decision of the Historic Preservation Commission files their appeals with the planning board under the municipal land use law. However, these appeals are better directed to the zoning board. So we're just amending the code to fix that and bring it more in line with the MLUO.
Thank you. Okay, do we have someone on council moving? David moves the ordinance introduction. Is there a second? Michelle has the second. Thank you very much. Roll call vote.
Ms. Perone Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sacks.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Next, we have 4 resolutions. First one is 21-144, a resolution expressing interest in acquiring open space and authorizing municipal action in support of acquisition.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is a project that the community has been working on for quite some time. Not sure exactly how long, but it is expressing an interest that the town would accept 40 acres from the Ridgeview Homeowners Association, who wish to donate that to the town. We have adjacent properties up there. There's a trail network that they put in that would be beneficial to the community. There'll be some other trade-offs with them, the obligation that we're going to have as far as trying to provide some parking, et cetera. But this really expresses our interest that allows the staff to, or authorizes the staff to complete the work necessary in which to make this transaction take place. So that's what this is for.
Thank you, Bob. Mia?
I'd like to move it, but I also wanted to make a comment.
Okay.
So I move it. I'm moving it, making a motion, but I also wanted to just thank, it was actually not that, I first wanted to thank the Homeowners Association for making this incredibly generous donation to the town. And I'm sorry that it's taken us so long to accept it. And the fact that it's taken so long is not in any way a measure of a lack of gratitude, but just simply the legal and logistical hurdles involved in the transfer and various other things. But we're really, really grateful. And also I want to thank Trish Shanley and Wendy Mager and former engineer Bob Kaiser and Friends of Princeton Open Space, who've all really helped support this project and helped us to get us to this point where we can accept it. And I also wanted to just give Trish Shanley and the Ridgeview Conservancy a huge shout out for the work that they're doing with young people in our town. They've, as Mark said, they've created, and Bob, they've created this whole trail network, and they're going to extend that trail network to this this additional 40 acres. So it's just a tremendous benefit for the town, and it's an example of the community working together to create something really special. So thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Is there a second on this motion?
Oh.
Eve has the second. Okay, and I would just add, it's a great site. I mean, I walked it. This is really a great addition for us. So happy that we're able to do it. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments before we vote? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, everyone said aye. Thank you very much. Next, we have 21-145, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Gregory Sandusky, PE, PLS, in the not to exceed amount of $18,250 for 2020 tax map preparation. Is there a motion on this one? Eve, Eve moves it? Is there a second? David seconds it. Questions, comments on the resolution? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. That was all. Everyone said aye. 21-146, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to W.E. Timmerman Company via the Sourcewell contract for the purchase of one 2021 Elgin Pelican Series P street sweeper in the amount of, hey, Bob, can you mute I'm getting feedback from you.
Sorry about that.
Yes, all right, sure. Street sweeper in the amount of $261,164.59. Purchase of one, again, 2021 Elgin Pelican Series P street sweeper. If you vote for this, you get to drive it one time. Is there a, okay, Michelle's the quickest with the motion.
I
Eve's
can't
got the
wait.
second.
Michelle gets to drive it first.
It's a dollar.
Imagine.
$1 to drive it, come on.
For
Anyway,
$250,000,
yeah, it's a-
everyone in town should be able to drive it.
there you go. All right, any questions or comments before we vote on this one? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. Everyone voted aye. Thank you very much. 21-147, resolution authorizing the submittal of a Preserve New Jersey Capital Level 2 grant application for the project entitled Rehabilitation of a Historic Stone Arc Bridge at the Mountain Lakes Preserve, committing to the dedication of up to $500,000 in matching funds and authorizing municipal representatives to sign the assurances documentation. Is there a motion? Eve, thank you very much. Eve moves it.
A motion, can I make a comment also?
Absolutely.
Thank you to Wendy Mager, who brought this grant to our attention, I think, and to Bob for moving mountains, being a miracle worker and getting it all done in a very short period of time. So it's really a great benefit to the town for a project of historic significance in our lovely Mountain Lakes preserves. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eve. I'm sorry, did I get a second on that? David?
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Any other council comments or questions on this one? Okay, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, everyone said aye. Thank you very much. Next is the consent agenda. And typically, just so people in the audience know, we move the consent agenda as one item unless anyone on council had any reason to question or pull something out of consent agenda. If not, would someone want to move the, let me just say real quick, in the consent agenda, we're paying our bills. We have a contract for crack repair, resurfacing, a repainting of Grover Park and Community Park South basketball courts. We're doing a professional services agreement for GIS, Geographic Information Services. We're actually doing 2 of those. We have a resolution approving the application of funding for the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance's October 2020 to June 2025 Municipal Alliance Grant. Leticia, do you just want to real briefly talk about number 6 in the consent agenda, the endorsing the enactment of immigration reform?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution that was actually brought to our attention that Trenton adopted this resolution last month, and it was brought to the attention of the Human Services Commission, who at their meeting last week unanimously voted to recommend that council, Princeton Mayor and Council, adopt this resolution and endorsing it, and also asking that copies of it be sent to our regional, state, and other elected officials, recommending that they vote in favor of this. The President Biden's Immigration Reform U.S. Citizenship Act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then the 2 other items in the consent agenda, one is placement of pole banners on Nassau Street, and the last one is a release of escrow fees to the cap and gown fund. Okay, so if there's no questions on any of those, but Leticia wants to move the entire consent agenda. Is there a second to move it? Dwayne has the second. All in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Everyone said aye. Okay. Mr. Cohen, thank you. Mr. Cohen makes a motion to adjourn. Eve seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is over. Thank you to the council members. Thank you to the public. Thank you to staff. Everybody have a great night.
And thank you, Mayor.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Care.
Good night.